Here's Mindful Man with a UFO story. I'm going to read all of it because I think my clips could be too short, but they're not shorts, which I'm very confused about. Right then, Chapter 1. It came out of the night sky like a shard of glass, piercing the darkness with arcs and swoops, fast as a meteor but silent as a spear. A group of tramps far below scratched their heads as they drank their whiskey, momentarily puzzled, then returned to their drink. It swept past offices and skyscrapers before turning suddenly and shooting straight past Big Ben before the seconds ticked. It was a brilliant photo opportunity missed by the sleeping populace. It then shot off at incredible speed before stopping in mid-air and landing in a sea of glowing red and green lights on the crisp, damped grass of Hyde Park. It was 4 a.m. and there was no one about, and one of the most momentous days of mankind was being observed by the occasional squirrel and rabbit. The craft changed from black to silver to being completely translucent. The large oak trees behind were visible and to all purposes it was not there. An hour later, Simon set off on his paper round. As usual, he decided to take a short cut through the park. He was 11 years old and he was a loner and a dreamer. His paper round gave him just enough money to buy the books he loved to read and escape into H. G. Wells' Roald Dahl, and if he was feeling brave, Stephen King. He disliked school and he enjoyed his freedom which his paper round gave him. He always cut across the park unless it was raining. He hated mud. He loved being clean and tidy. He didn't think that they would thank him at school if he brought in a load of mud. He arrived at the park early, as he had whizzed round his paper round. He liked to treat it like a sports exercise and to see how quickly he could finish it. The sun was coming up and the beautiful oak trees were bathed in crisp light as the morning rolled in. He walked briskly across the park, his Adidas trainers keeping him buoyant as if he was on a newly laid carpet. His bag felt light with all of the newspapers delivered. He then saw a battered tennis ball on the ground and he picked it up and bounced it in front of him as he bobbed along happily. This is a great morning, he thought. He threw the ball at the tall oak tree, which was 50 yards in front of him, aiming for dead center. To his amazement, it bounced back. He picked it up and threw it again, half in shock, and again it bounced back with a slight thud. This is amazing, he thought, and he walked up to where the ball had hit and he saw nothing, but he felt a strange energy crackling like static. Closer and closer he crept until his nose touched a warm solid object like glass. He jumped back and then he reached his hand out and touched it with his fingers. He could feel the quietly pulsing energy. Instantly it was filled with color, smoky grey, and then silver, and then pitch black. To his amazement, he saw that it was an alien spaceship, a UFO. He had some interest in extraterrestrials, and he had read quite a few books about them, but he thought that most of them were hoaxes. A lot of them were government projects or stealth bombers, he thought, but this was the real deal, a UFO in London. It was lucky that there was no one about, he thought, and just then, in an instant, it changed back again, and he felt honored to be the only witness. He didn't see any little green men, but any color would have been cool to him. Despite his momentous discovery, he knew that he still had to get to school. All through that day and the lessons, he thought of nothing else. The hours went by so slowly, it was torture. He thought of telling someone, but he knew that no one would believe him, and he didn't want to be made fun of. At last the school bell rang, and he ran as fast as possible to get to the park. It was about half a mile away, and when he got there, his shirt was drenched with sweat and he was panting heavily. He saw the tennis ball on the ground and he looked around to see if anyone was watching. Then he walked towards the invisible craft. This time there was no thud, it wasn't there. He knelt on the grass with tears in his eyes. "Where are you?" he cried. It should have been there, but wasn't. He walked home with his head down. He knew no one would believe him, but now he almost didn't believe himself. That night he lay in bed and he stared at the ceiling. He could see the stars through his window, and he wondered which star it may have returned to. He was the only person on Earth who knew that there was life on other planets, but no one else had a clue. Just then, he saw a star twinkling in the sky, and then it appeared to move, as if it had noticed him. Suddenly, it shot across the sky like a meteor and then disappeared. Then it reappeared like a flashing light, and he knew it was back. A smile spread across his face, and he watched it get further and further away, and then boom! It zapped out of view at mind-boggling speed. Simon crawled into bed, and he slept so soundly and deeply that not even little green men tapping at his window would have been able to wake him. This story is in my collected stories on Amazon KDP. I hope I read it okay. I get overexcited when I read.